Hey everyone, Fox here from Fox and Kit Woodworks. So, about a month ago, I dropped the setup and review of the VEVOR 5 to 8 kilowatt diesel heater. I actually had done that a few weeks before I actually released the video, but now I want to bring you basically we'll call it re-review or updated review of the VEVOR 5 to 8 kilowatt diesel heater. So, from our last video, you got to see me do the setup, install, hookup, and even some of the problems that I ran into initially running it, which really kind of boiled down to being user error more than anything, and user install issues. So, in this video, what we're going to do is do the re-review of the diesel heater, how it's been performing, but also go over some of the modifications that I have made to my setup that make it work better. A few comments on input that had been given by the community talking about these diesel heaters and how to more efficiently set them up, as well as future plans and attachments for this to be able to make it run smoother and better. So let's go ahead and get you over to the actual diesel heater. Okay, and this should be an actual pretty familiar view of the diesel heater. We went over the LCD screen here and some of the different menu items and buttons. One of the things I would like to go over as part of this review is how it works when set up in the two different modes. There is a temperature gauge mode and a kind of power setting mode. Now, both work well, but depending on how cold your shop is or how much heat you're trying to pump out immediately, the power setting mode, which is the one displayed here, is by far the most efficient, or I should say maybe not efficient, but powerful way of doing it. Currently I have it set to a 5. It's a little bit loud. It's not too horribly loud, but we can go all the way up to a 10. And in the background, you'll hear that noise increase. And what I've kind of figured out on this is it is increasing the burn, it sounds like, just by listening to the fuel pump and how much fuel is actually used in the same time frame over the last couple times I've used it. But it also turns the inline fan for the motor, pulling all that air across those fins on that engine to heat it up much, much faster. And the pressure out the exhaust definitely increases, and you can feel that air get pushed further through your shop or whatever you're trying to warm up. Now, for the temperature gauge mode, or it's going to bring the temperature as close to possible what you set it at the machine, it runs more efficiently. That would be the right point to put it in. It does not run the engine at a very fast pace. It's not burning through a lot of diesel. The inline fan kind of turns down quite a bit. It will progress up depending on what temperature you set it to. But for instance, currently it's reading about a temperature of 77 degrees at the machine. And we are currently set to have it be about 96.8. So in this mode, it is going to pump it out at its max setting for we'll call it temperature gauge mode. And it's actually quite nice. It will maintain temperatures in your area. It even maintains the temperature pretty well in my 400 square foot garage, just a standard 2-car garage. Once I get it up to a temperature that I like, it will pretty much maintain that. It might drop a little bit, but it is more efficient on the fuel. So let's go ahead and take a look at the fuel tank. All right, and here is our setup. I am going to be purchasing down the road the unethical manufacturing, I believe is what their name is, or engineering, I can't remember, gas tank conversion. And basically what it allows is a tube to come straight into your gas tank, so you don't have to keep filling up this 1-gallon gas tank on the machine. You can basically use a variety of style cans, from Jerry cans, Midwest cans, you name it. They pretty much have an adapter for it, and it'll let it hook directly up to your can. The benefit of that is, one, more diesel for the heater. I have a couple 5-gallon cans that I could fill up and just have one sitting and the other in here. And when I need to switch them out, it's an easy switch. Fuel consumption wise on this, when you run it in this temperature mode where it cuts down, I am getting about 10 to 12 hours on 1 gallon of diesel. When I switch it over to the high power mode, that 10, I burnt through about 1 liter to 1.5 liters in, let's say, about 3 hours, which is about 1/3 of a tank. Well, it's, technically 1 liter would be 1/5, but it was more like 1.5, so it was more like a third of a tank. And it would probably last about 8 hours on a full tank, but it definitely shows a significant increase in diesel consumption when you set it to that power setting. Now, as for my setup here, a lot hasn't changed. I have made a few subtraction and additions since my initial review. We have fully added on the 8-foot pipe. I still have the 25-foot here, which I believe I'm going to use. I'm just got to get the right splitter for the 3-inch tubing, so that way I can have a nozzle pointing here and another running up to the ceiling and going across and dumping down. I did remove the bricks and just put it on the wood. I will switch that out at a point later down the road. But since I've actually cleaned the system out, and when I say cleaned out, I didn't clean the system. I actually got it fired up and running and let it burn really hot and fast with no exhaust hooked up to it for about an hour outside and brought it in. If you go watch my first video or some of my shorts, you'll see that. They're linked up here. And that really seemed to get it going. I think there was a combination of maybe some carbon buildup, but a lot of maybe flooding. And once I got everything kind of reblown out, it was good to go. That being said, if you haven't already, please hit that like, subscribe, and notification button. And why don't you go ahead and join us on our road to 750 subscribers. Currently, right now, returning viewers are only about 3%, which is actually kind of a good thing. That means a lot of chance for growth. So if you're new to the channel, please follow along on our journey. Now, back to the diesel heater. I subtracted the bricks out to get it lower so I can fill it up easier. That's one of the reasons why I want to get the attachment that goes directly to the tank, or I should say the fill tank, so that way I don't have to fill it up as often. This current tank is a gasoline one, or supposed to be for gasoline. It was the only one available in 2 gallons. I had purchased that and I used that for the diesel. I do have 2 5-gallon diesel tanks out there, which would actually probably give me a good 15 to 20 days of use on this diesel heater for the needs that I need it for when I am out here. Again, we're in California. It doesn't get too cold. When it does, I can run this for about 8 hours. It's about a gallon of a gallon of diesel, and you know, it's $5 because we're in California. But to heat this space with no real insulation and get it up to a decent temperature, it's actually pretty good. Which leads me into the review on actually warming the garage. I've used it quite a few times on days that were like in the 50s, 60s. The garage was sitting right around 58 degrees, 60 degrees, and I just want to see how much I could bump it up. Now, I do have 2 thermometers set up. I have one on the safe here, and I have one behind us on the wood pile. Now, when I used it on those days, it would typically raise the temperature up from maybe 65 degrees to 71, 72 in this area. I think it was actually warmer over here just because that's right where it exhausts out at. But also, this thermometer is on the big metal safe, so I think it gets some radiating cold from it. But that was pretty nice. And that was only for a low setting, the temperature setting, for about an hour, hour and a half. It raised it about 5 degrees. But the more impressive thing was on the opposite side of the room. It took it from about 63 or 65 degrees all the way up to 70 degrees. That was a huge gain for me because it's actually heating the whole garage. Now, part of the reason why I wanted to do it tonight, like I said earlier in the video, is that we have a pretty good cold front coming through, and we've been getting a lot of snow up in the mountains. And down here in the foothills, kind of the beginning of the valley, we're dipping down to 35 degrees. So outside current temperature, I just checked, was 40 degrees. Before I turned this on back at 5 o'clock my time, it was 51 degrees in our shop. It is now currently 15 or a quarter past 10. So it's been about 5 hours that it's been running on a max speed. And my thermometer over here is actually reading 68 degrees. But the more impressive part is my thermometer over there is at 61, and it keeps kind of bumping up from 61.0 to 61.2 to 4, back to 2, up to 4, down to 4, up to 6. So it is steadily increasing on the opposite side. I think if I was definitely to run this on the max setting for a good amount of time, like a good 8 hours as a prep warm during a cold front, I would actually get this garage up into the mid or high 60s, and then I could help maintain it on a lower setting, only needing to bump it up if it started to get too cold. So heating power, especially in this garage, I think it's about 400 square feet, 440. It's doing quite well. It's the fact that I'm actually able to even out almost both sides. They're within about 4 to 5 degrees of each other most of the time. Currently, we're about 6 or 7 with this colder front, but that's where adding that exhaust coming across and over on the other side with an inline fan would definitely help out the system. Now, during my last short and review of the VEVOR, I did get some good comments and input, as well as some issues that came up on other people's. I hope I was able to answer some of your guys' questions out there when it came in regards to getting your problem fixed or what potentially a problem was. But I do have to give a shout out, and of course I forgot his name now that I'm on camera, for actually giving some input to me on my setup. One of the things he did comment on is that my exhaust, which is dipped down, up, and then back down again, is not as efficient and also could run into problems. Any debris, junk, water is going to go form in the bottom of that dip, and it's either going to cause corrosion, rust, or potential back pressure issues, or the worst case would be actually allowing stuff to go up. Luckily, the machine is higher, so flow would actually eventually go out of the machine, but it's just a thought that you could think of. Unfortunately, for my shop, where it needs to rest is going to be right here. Once I get that system to hook up to the actual jerry can, I will be able to raise it up higher, but then that's also going to, come in with some other build options I'm going to have to do to actually support it up higher, so that way it's out of the way and supported and doesn't get knocked over. Another thing that he had mentioned was running your intake to the exterior. Now, I have read different articles on this, and I do believe he is quite correct. So he has more experience in these than I do. From his background, what I saw on his YouTube channel, it looks like he has some more background in engines. And just knowing how engines run, cold air really does help make them run more efficient. They don't overheat, things of that nature. However, we are working in a garage where the temperature inside is about 20 degrees warmer than the outside. I don't think that's going to affect this engine that much. But maybe one day what I will do is get an extension for my inlet, run it into a separate vent down the side. That way it's far enough away from the exhaust that it's not running the chance of pulling more of the exhaust fumes in and maybe extinguishing that flame that's already going. So I haven't changed anything on those bends. I have actually lowered it closer to the position it was originally. What would I like to do in the future with this machine? Well, I've already said it a bunch of times. The unethical manufacturing, I would love to get a couple of their systems. One, they do have a silent pump that is supposed to be more efficient and work better with your fuel consumption. I'd love to put that in there. I think it's about 40 bucks. They have a kit that will allow you to change out all your tubing and go into your jerry can. That's another about 40 bucks. So for about 80 bucks, you can get a pretty decent upgrade on one of these machines for really a pretty low amount into this. I got this on a sale for about $113 after shipping and tax. You can get them on what the guys online call the double discounts, where you can get them down under $100. And for that price, you really can't beat it for the kind of heating it does, especially for your different solutions, whether it's in a garage, a shed, maybe a van, things of that nature. Next, what I would like to purchase, and I am going to purchase, is an inline fan. This fan is quite strong, even on this lower setting. It's pretty decent. But to help get the hot air further along and warm the whole garage up, two things are going to happen. One, an inline fan is going to get put here to bump up that CFM. That way we're getting more air rate coming through, getting pushed out, because we're going to be adding more venting to it. Well, we're going to add more, venting. So what we're going to end up doing is getting a T-splitter. And the T-splitter is going to go up here. This piece will connect directly into it. This nozzle will probably get cut off about here, or maybe I'll use the one that came with it. It'll just kind of sit here. Really, that's just for protection from the galvanized steel that they typically use on these. Sharp edges, don't want to hit it on your head. At least there'll be a little bit of protection between it and the sharp edge. That is going to help push the air directly into this area where I typically sit and run my laser engraver. We're then going to take this 25-foot piece of ducting and we're going to attach that on the top. We're going to run it up to the ceiling and we're going to actually snake it past this light and down behind us to where the wood pile is. Once it's over there, with that additional airflow, being more powerful and taking that air as close to the heat source as possible and pushing it through faster, hopefully we won't lose as much temperature along that whole route, not to mention adding more heat to the entire garage, heating it more uniformly. All right, and for my final upgrade, and in fact, I would probably put this first ahead of all the other things I've just said, just because this little tubing that they give you in the kit isn't really long enough to do much unless it is going into a van or maybe a camper or a really small shed. In a garage like this, you're going to want to be able to pull that air to where you're at. Maybe you leave a long hose like this that dangles from the ceiling, and you're able to kind of move it to the different stations you're at. Just rubbing up against it or little kids coming and grabbing it, if you want to get rid of that concern, any concerns for fire, overheating something while it's touching it, go with the insulated ducting. It might as well be as simple as using your insulated ducting coming up to here, and then if you're going to run it across your ceiling, go ahead and get these metal ducting hangers. Let this sit down in the bottom of it. That way it's not touching the ceiling. Screw them in. You don't have to do them super tight, but it's just going to allow that little bit of space. And with that insulated right next to you, you're not going to worry about maybe someone actually burning themselves or something maybe catching on fire. So my final thoughts for the VEVOR 5 to 8 kilowatt diesel heater. Absolutely would recommend it, especially if you're running a small garage operation, she shed, van, camper that doesn't have a heating unit. For the price, the amount of heat it puts out, the relatively low cost, especially if you live in states where diesel's much cheaper than gas, you're going to be getting anywhere from 8 to 12 hours of heating out of 1 gallon of diesel, potentially more if you are using it in such a small space where you can set it to the heat or the temperature setting, and it's going to be turning on and off on its own. You could probably get that 1 gallon to stretch out a couple days. Is absolutely by far worth the money. Now, I will say this. It is cheaply made. The metal's a little bit flimsy. You saw me on them. If you watch my other video, you'll see I take the case off and everything kind of flimsies around. When you put the case back on, it tightens up really nice. You can go out and spend lots more money, and I mean lots more money. There are companies out there that sell these kits specifically for vans, travel vans and whatnot, and they are going to run somewhere in the price point of $1,500 to $2,000 for the full kit. Even Unethical Manufacturing has a all-in-one kit that you can create out of theirs. I believe theirs starts around $500 or $600. Wouldn't be a bad idea. It already comes with some of the upgrades. You're paying for some more nicer parts. But for us DIYers that are willing to save a few bucks maybe in the quality of the build, even as long as it works and runs fine and you get your money's worth out of it, for $100 or less, I've already used this thing for about 50 hours, and it's running strong, no other issues. It's definitely worth the money. I'm only going to be using this machine typically in the wintertime, 4 or 5 months out of the year, or I should say 3 to 4 months out of the year, and it's just going to be warming it up to a nice comfortable temperature around 68 degrees over here, hopefully 68 over there. We're good with that. So I hope you all like this video and re-review. Please let me know if there's anything else you guys would like to see. And as always, thank you for watching the channel.